All right, thank you, Sammy. All right, I think I'm pretty adventurous being the only person standing here without any slides. Okay, so first up, I'm Gary. I was born in British colonial Hong Kong, and I grew up in Singapore. Did all my studies there, and then moved to America for a full-time role. Before I talk more about myself, I'm just gonna make a local announcement in Cantonese, a few sentences. 大家好，我叫邝子俊。我咧就舊年都係喺度講過 HKOSCON 嘅，我發覺咧就如果我用廣東話介紹下自己先咧，同大家講我係識講廣東話嘅，咁之後咧你哋咧就唔會咁怕醜嚇，係嘛？會嚟上嚟即係同我之後一齊傾下偈啊！咁我隨時歡迎。All right, so I'm currently a senior engineer on the fuzzing team in Mozilla Corporation. What I want to share isn't exactly anything really technical or anything like that. It's just more of what it's like to work across the Pacific. All right, I've been in open source for a long time. I started out in Mozilla Community 2002, maybe. I found my first bug in 2004. And 2008, I was an intern and then contractor and now full-time and so on and so forth. So I realized that when I first started, for example, why did I take 2 years or a year and a half to find my first bug? Because I realized there was a heavy Asian mentality in me going, what if I found the wrong bug? What if I look stupid? What if I sound crazy? What if I found something and then nobody understands what I'm saying? You know, it's on record. You know, it's on record. You can go back and check how crappy it was. And luckily, my first bug was just resolved. Works for me, which means it's a bug. It's just we don't know what fixed it. And that's something I would like to reiterate to everybody, which is sometimes, especially in the world of open source, you have to go outside your comfort zone. You have to be a little bit more daring. You have to stand up and ask questions, because sometimes in the Western world, I'd say most open source projects tend to be a little bit Western centric. And so if people have any questions, if you have anything, they raise their hand and they ask immediately. Whereas for Asian mentality, it's usually the person asks, is there any question? Nobody has any question, but you see there's a long queue outside talking to the teacher, right? At some point, we have been at that stage. Well, at least it's my experience here in Asia, in Singapore and Hong Kong as well. So that's something to note. And also, I like to share a little bit about what it takes to have a little bit better of communication between other people and us. So I'd say specifically like between Westerners and Easterners, for example. That's the experience that I have. One example would be things like offering gifts, right? For example, in Hong Kong, somebody comes from say the outside world, and then we say, oh, here's a little gift for you, like a little maybe some biscuits or cookies or something that's local, like egg rolls or something. And then when people reject you, you just keep offering, right? Because it's rude to accept the first time. So you just keep offering like 3, 4, 5 times until people go, okay, I'll accept it. That's very, I'd say that's more of a South China situation, because in Japan, you're supposed to ask like 8 or 9 times. And in America, you're only supposed to ask once, right? So how do you know when to stop, right? How do you know that's the case? And that's very often when none of us have any ill will. For example, the American wants to work with us Asians, and we feel we have to be polite. We keep asking over and over again, but to them, if you ask even 3 times or even 2 times, they go, what is this person doing? Like, why is this person not trusting me when I say I don't want it, right? Did I not make myself clear? But for us, it's very rude to accept, even though, oh, yes, I really want that chocolate. Like, no, you have it. Oh, please, no, you have it. Oh, please. After all, it just gets tiring. That's why when I come back to Asia, I just tell people, please stop this nonsense. I'm just going to ask you 2 or 3 times. If you go up to 10, I'm sorry, I can't deal with 10 anymore. So that's another example. Another one would be, say, like greetings, like the kind of greetings that you tell each other when you see each other in the hallway. In Cantonese, you say, "Hey, lei hou ma," it's like, "You good? All right, how are you?" But in America, they go, "How's it going?" And then you come from a British education, and you just stand there and wonder, "What's going? Where am I going? I'm standing here talking to you." And it'd be rude for me to walk away, right? But no, really, what they mean is, "How are you?" And when they ask how are you, they don't actually want to hear your 5-minute stories. You, so even if you're really having a really bad day, you're still supposed to say good and you good. That's it. That's a conversation. Whereas here is just, if you want a similar effect, you just say hi, hey, and that's it. So I remember when I think it's not just us. I think even when Europeans go to America, they have the same feeling because if people ask you how are you, you actually bother to stand there and talk for 5 minutes. But yeah, it's just some of the examples where people, even if they have no ill will, they can very much cause their relationships to go a little weird and downhill. But very often, why I emphasize that this is really important is because I'll emphasize this again in my talk tomorrow. So I find bugs as part of my living. Like I just find them, I don't fix them, which means that I rely on the developers to fix them for me. And so I have to develop good relationships with them. And very often these people are in America, they're on the East Coast, they're in Europe, they're in Japan. And very often it's I have to introduce myself to them, talk a little bit about where they're from, where I'm from, what I know about them, and it's usually either language or things like football teams and all that. And then we'll sit down and go, oh yeah, yeah, it's nice. I know where you're from. You know where I'm from. And then the next thing I say is always, oh, by the way, there's this bug that I found. So resulting sometimes I have a reputation, which means some new people, even before they have heard of me, they go, all right, you're Gary, right? You're gonna ask me to fix another $3 for you. But yeah, that's the point because you can say it in a joking way. Nobody wants to have 3 goals a quarter and for a QA team or a fuzzing team to suddenly come up to you 2 days before your landing point and telling you, no, you cannot land this because you have 5 security bugs, right? Because that's not good. And that's why we make it clear right from the start that as you have some implementation that you're about to land, we start testing it maybe in an alpha or beta-ish cycle, and then we tell you whether it's ready to land or not, and then you can report to your bosses, all right, this is what the teams, their feedback to us. Basically, we're their friends. And being their friends very much entails that we have to have good working relationships outside of just work. For some people, it could be sitting down and let's have a drink. For some people, it could just be just regular conversations in the office that don't revolve around work. So besides that, also the next point I'd like to bring up is things like interruptions. In Asian culture, it's usually quite rude to interrupt. Right? For example, I'm here talking to you. In fact, I really hope that somebody raises his or her hand and counterpoint me or point out an example that I have. But I'm in Asia right now, and that would never happen, right? But in a Western setting, it would happen. And that means that when you go to social events, when you go to, say, people are standing holding a drink or something, and they're a group of 2 or 3 people, and there's one particular person you really, really want to talk to. So you go up to them and you hold your drink and you go, When is it the right time for me to say something? The answer is there's no right time, right? You just hear what they're saying and just go up to them and say, hi, I'm so and so, right? Whereas in an Asian setting, it's usually, oh, there's that clique. How can I enter that clique? And I have my own clique. They have their own clique. They have their own clique. And you start overly thinking a long period of time of how you should go about doing things. And really, sometimes you don't have to. But of course, there are also some things like subtleties. Subtleties, I mean, how direct people can be. For some people from certain countries, like Germany, for example, again, I'm generalizing. It doesn't have to always be the case for a person. Germans tend to be very direct, which means that if they see something is right or wrong, they will just specifically tell you, right? Whereas from an Asian perspective, you might think, why is this person criticizing me? I spent 3 months of my work day, 12 hours a day working on this, and all I can tell me is something bad, right? But that's no ill will from them, right? They are just telling you what's right, what's wrong. Whereas sometimes in Asia, people go round and round and round. Oh, they tell you, oh yeah, that thing looks good. Just probably you have to notice the very last sentence where they say, except where that particular bit needs to be changed. Like, so really, I think generally speaking, most people around the world, they are nice people. They care about the project itself, and that includes in open source where you go to bug trackers. When people ask you why are things like that, they are not telling you that you're a bad engineer. They're trying to make things better for all of us by pointing out something that, if it could be improved, everyone stands to benefit, right? It's not an attack on our character or something. So at this point, I'm gonna take a step back a little and ask: are there anybody who wants to share any interesting experience? Please. Yes, Chris. Mm-hmm.
I observed that if the Chinese people when they go to the West to educate, like my supervisor,
Mm-hmm.
he originates from Beijing,
Mm-hmm.
and she go to UPenn in the US to do her PhD.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, she's very direct. So every time the similar, and she observes something is very wrong or she have problem, she will just interrupt
Mm-hmm.
and ask question. And I think it's good. So maybe we are from the Eastern, right? Maybe we can also learn about. I think it's good because sometimes it's better to point out question at the point instead of just
Right.
because as you say we like to actually we like to after everything is aired we just go to DP center and ask question, but then maybe is too late or the actual presenter does not forget what he or she is saying. So yeah, thank you.
Right. So thank you, Chris. Basically, as I understand, Chris' point is, say you have a lecturer or something goes overseas, has a different kind of experience, and brings that culture back. We should be able to deal with it. And I think that's very true. I think that's very correct because when you go and work in the outside world, especially open source communities, you're dealing with people from different cultures. And while you might be able to generalize the way each country generally operates, the individual is usually different, right? The individual may have a different family upbringing and a different kind of language exposure, or he or she is only accustomed to speaking English, for example, versus the local language. Then it really means that being an open source world, you have to be more flexible. You have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. You have to be able to embrace that there's something called difference other than what you're used to. Right? I grew up in Singapore. I didn't grow up in Hong Kong. I come back and I realize I've been speaking Cantonese that's 20 years old and people laugh at me. Right? But I go to America and I speak what I think to be proper British English and people still laugh at me anyway. So, why not just get used to getting laughed at? Because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't laugh at Americans for, say, Mandarin or something. Really, it's about yourself. It's about being able to say, all right, I'm not going to do something that my society expects of me because I want to try this other thing. Well, go ahead, sure. Don't hold back, right? Um, and I think it's really important that is the case. And thank you, Chris, for sharing his experience. Anybody else has something similar to share as well? No. Yeah, I will. How much time do I have? Yeah, so we have 15 minutes. I think I will talk maybe for about 5-10 minutes more, and basically, anybody again in the usual Asian context, if anybody wants to share their experience in private, on the side, that's fine. Um, so some other things that I would like to share that's really interesting is the boundaries between work and home and family, for example. Something I noticed in being in America for more than half a decade now is when people go out for meals or drinks, or even just random discussions in the hallway, they'll start talking about, oh, my son is, my daughter is, blah blah blah, my family is something like that. But whereas when I come back to Asia, that almost never happens, and that's usually because there is the boundary between home and work, right? It's really distinct in this part of the world. Whereas on the other side, people feel that if they share a little bit about their family, they're actually lowering their social barrier, right? So basically, it's up to you whether you want to share or not. Um, but it also means that when people from the other side, say in America, when they come here, they should be wary of that boundary because they should not ask unless people mention, right? Because it's not just Easterners should suit the Westerners, but sometimes the Westerners should also suit the Easterners, right? There's always a mutual understanding. And I'm talking about in general, people are nice, even though you look at the papers and some of the politics that's happening right now, people, I'm talking about the normal folks, the ordinary folks. And basically things like if you have someone who is from outside the region, even if he or she speaks the same language, very often if you use too much slang, right, that's not going to go through. I could go to America, I could speak perfect English, or at least what I think to be perfect British English, and unfortunately I realized that a particular phrase is a, is a slang from the area. It shouldn't be said in the workplace. You have to learn. And it also happens to me as well when I come back here and I speak Cantonese, and people throw in, say, an example. I'd say it's like "what gay," and I go, what's what gay? Right. Yeah, what gay just means being really good at something, or somebody can correct me later. um, and another example would be, say you see someone in the hallway and you go, "Hey, have you eaten?" Very common, right, in Hong Kong. Very, have you eaten? Have you eaten? Very, very common in Singapore. It's the same thing. It's about me, and all that. What about India? Do people ask you, have you eaten? It's very common, right? Very common for us. But yeah, in the Western world, at least in America, it's like, what does me having a meal have to do with you? Are you trusting that? Are you not trust that? You don't trust that I can take care of myself. What do you mean? But yeah, really, what we really mean is, um, how are you? It's the same thing. We don't literally mean have you eaten. It's like in Hong Kong. I just learned this few months. Like when they say 得閒飲茶, when 得閒飲茶 means when you are free, let's have tea. But it turns out that they don't really mean let's have tea. It just means maybe see you again later or something. And I always took that literally these past few decades. So I always learn new things every day, just like everybody else. But yeah, another example would be things like when we say "I'm sorry" versus when Westerners say "I'm sorry." Westerners tend to say "I'm sorry" a little bit more liberally. They tend to mean "I'm sorry for you," "I'm sorry to hear that," but they just chop off the remaining bit and just say "I'm sorry." And go, why are you apologizing for something you're not part of? I could say like, "Oh, my dog fell sick yesterday," and people say "I'm sorry," and I go, "Why are you apologizing for my dog? It has nothing to do with them." But yeah, really, what they mean is "I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sorry for you." Whereas for us, when you say "I'm sorry," it means, "Oh crap, I did something wrong and it's bad, and then something that I should apologize for." So even besides things like words, the next thing I can think of is accents. Right? How many of you have faced problem with accents like tomato, tomato? That's an excellent example. And of course, I could switch to a Singlish accent here, but most people probably wouldn't understand. But it also means that, say, in America, when people say he can't do it, and they'll swallow the T, or it says, "Oh, he's from Mountain View, and he can't be there in Mountain View." So I go, "What? He can? He cannot? Can't?" Right? So things like that. When you are dealing with people from another country, you must be aware that even if, say, "Oh, it is English, I'm supposed to speak proper English." Hey, in Hong Kong, you're learning proper British English. It's not really English from another side of the road. But it also means that when we type in bug reports, for example, whether you are used to British spellings and American spellings might also be really, really interesting. But yeah, so generally that's the gist of most of what I can share. I think what I find is if foreigners come to generally an Asian world and they speak like maybe 2 or 3 phrases of the local language, and if they look foreign, important, they have to look foreign, all right? People go, "Wow, your Cantonese is really good, your Mandarin is really good," or "Wow, your Hindi is really good." I go to America and I speak 3 days of English and nobody says my English is good anyway. So yeah, be prepared. No matter how hard you try, sometimes our language is not gonna be up to people's expectations. But yeah, with that, I hope everybody enjoyed this little sharing session. And if you have anything to add, you could choose to raise your hand now and talk. Or, yes. So would you like the microphone? Oh, right. It's like 大海凉茶. Mm, right. Okay. I think I know where you're coming from. So especially if you have weird questions like, don't you think this is possible? And very often the Westerners would say yes and no in a different way from the Easterners. And I think the reason for that is because Easterners don't like to reject people. We don't like to say the negative side of things. So everything, like for example, if I were to ask for directions in Japan and the person doesn't know what I'm talking about, he or she will still say yes, 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 yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, which means yes or no. I agree. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. You see, that's yes. The issue that you bring up is very, very real. It's a very, very correct topic, and there's no way around the yes or no problem except yes what, no what. So the complete sentence is important, right? Always ask for context. Oh, it's going to be a problem for the rest of our lives, when we do it with people outside. Definitely. I face the same problem too, especially when I'm tired and when I'm dealing with many people, many cultures in the same place. I will end up speaking English to a Hong Kong person. I will end up speaking British English to an American. It doesn't. Everybody faces that. I run in that problem too. And so, really, the solution that I can think of for everybody is really the context. Yes, what? No, what? Like when you hear yes, don't be so happy. When you hear no, don't be so sad, right? Double negatives. Now that's also really tricky because we learn in say our English lesson in Asia that double negatives usually mean positives, right? But let me ask you, have you heard this sentence before? He ain't doing it no more. He ain't doing no nothing. No, he ain't do nothing means he really did not do anything. But that's vernacular African American English, right? It's not the double negatives that you and I learned in school. And so because of that, the way we should deal with it is let's use simple English. Right? Let's reserve our little jokes for people who really understand. For example, I'm in Hong Kong. I wouldn't speak like German or Flemish French jokes here because nobody understands. Right? I would go to Belgium and tease the Netherlands in front of my Belgian friends, but I wouldn't come here and tease about Canada and US, for example, even though there's a lot of things between each other. Stuff like that. Um, but thank you for bringing up that yes no point. I think I also have it on one of my points here, just that I don't have enough time to cover all of it. But yeah, it's really important when people say yes and no, especially if they seem to be Asian or foreign. They would reply in a certain way. But really, don't judge a book by its cover. That person could be born in another part of the world and then could be using a different culture and applying that local language. And that's why even for me in Cantonese, I make that same problem of going yes, hi something or my something, and I don't know what I'm talking about because I don't have that context, right? So thank you for that. What's your name, by the way? Newton. Thank you, Newton. All right. I think I'm running out of time now, so thank you, and I will still be around and round the corner or something. And if you have anything, please feel free to share your experience. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gary. So thank you for all of you coming, and we will have the big starting in 3 minutes. So you guys can have an open discussion.